Good day, students. I will be doing question 4 in one of the previous question papers. And this question will be based on the accounting equation. And I'll go through the transactions in the accounting equation. And this is question 4 that I've given you as an exercise to revise in preparation of the exams that are coming. And this question read as follows. Strips and More is a sole trader. The business has a favorable bank balance. And the minute you are told that the business has a favorable bank balance, then this is an indication that it is a debit balance. Favorable bank balance means a debit balance of the bank account. And they give us the favorable bank balance, and they say all payments are made by electronic fund transfer. That means they are using EFT to make all the payments. And says the transactions during the month of February 2016 are given to us below. So now we are given the transactions for the month of February in the year 2016. And the first one says a business bank account was opened and an amount of 50,000 rands was deposited into the account by the owner. So now this is the 50,000 that was contributed by the owner. And we know that if money is deposited, then the bank will increase, and we know that this will be increasing our bank, and we know that bank is increasing on the debit side. Therefore, now we have to record this as increase in our bank account. And because this is money that was deposited by the owner in the business bank account, therefore now the capital that was contributed by the owner will be increasing. Therefore now we expect our capital to be a plus, because this is capital that was contributed by the owner, and it was a capital of 50,000 rands. And secondly, it says 3 Apple iPads of 8,000 each. Take note, they say each. That means 8,000 times by 3 will give us the total of the iPads that were bought, which is 8,000 times this by 3, and it gives us 24,000. That means the total of the iPads that were bought totaled up to 24,000 rands. And they were bought from X Connection, and it says that they were bought for business purpose. So now all these were bought for the purpose of the business. Therefore now they will be recorded as assets to the business, because we bought them to use them in the business. And it further says that 7,500 was paid. So now out of the total of the 24,000, only 7,500 that was paid. So now obviously if we pay 7.5, money will go out of the bank account. Therefore now the remainder or the balance will be minus 7,500. It will be 24,000 minus 7,500. Therefore now 24,000 minus 7,500, and this will give us 16,500. The 16.5 will be the amount that is still to be paid, because they said that 7,500 was paid in cash with the outstanding balance on account. That means the amount that is not yet paid, that's still to be paid, it will be 16,500 rands. That will be increasing our liabilities in the accounting equation, but we'll record that when we do the accounting equation. Number 3 says the owner paid his annual golf club. Take note, it says the owner paid his annual golf club membership, and this is the money that the owner took out of the business to pay his annual golf club. And it says the fee of the membership is 2,000, and it took this from the business bank account. So now that means the owner withdraw money from the business, and this will be what we call drawings. This will be what we call drawings, and the owner withdraw an amount of 2,000 for personal use, which is his own golf club membership fee of 2,000. And we know that drawings, they are reducing the owner's equity, and at the same time, we also know that if we have drawings, therefore now our bank will have to decrease because the owner withdraw money out of the business, but drawings will be increasing. And don't forget the fact that drawings are reducing the owner's equity. Drawings are reducing the owner's equity. Therefore now the amount of drawings of 2,000 will be recorded as negative under the owner's equity. The next one is number 4, and number 4 says rendered landscaping services to Greenfinger on credit for 15,500. So now this business is rendering the service of landscaping. That means whenever the client wants to build a property or wants to build something, then they will need obviously a land surveyor or landscaping. Therefore now they have done the landscaping to their client, and the landscaping amounted to 15.5, but it was done on credit. Remember, landscaping in this case will be income. So now this is the main income of this business, and because this income was not yet received, the rendering of the service was done on credit. Therefore now account receivable, which is an asset, will be increasing at the same time. Account receivables will be increasing at the same time. Therefore now that will mean assets will increase, and also the income, which will affect our owner's equity, will also be increasing. Then still moving in that same pace, number 5 says paid office rent, and we know that if you pay, a bank account will decrease. Paid office rent, it was for the month of February, and that is 25,000 via an EFT. And we know that we are paying an expense, then we took money out of the bank, then our bank will decrease. Then we also have to take into account that rent expense will be increasing. Rent expense will be increasing, but don't forget that the effect of rent expense is negative. That means rent is reducing the owner's equity. Rent is reducing the owner's equity. So that is the reason now we say our rent will be reducing the owner's equity, but the bank will be decreasing. Then the last one is number 6, which says received. Take note, it says received, and we received an amount of 10,000. From who? This amount was received from Greenfinger as part of the settlement of their account. So now that tells us that from the entry that was in number 4, where we rendered a service of landscaping to Greenfinger, we are receiving the money from that client or from that data or from that account receivable. So now the customer is coming back to pay 10,000 out of the 15,000 that he owed us because of the landscaping that was done on credit. So now if we are receiving money in this case, therefore now we expect that our bank account will be increasing, and we know that the bank is an asset, therefore bank will be increasing on the debit side. And secondly, because the customer is paying the account, therefore now we expect account receivables to be decreasing. We expect account receivables to be decreasing. And why account receivables are decreasing is because when we rendered a service here, account receivables increased because we rendered a service on credit or on account to the customer. But when the customer is paying, therefore now we expect the account receivables to be decreasing by the same amount the customer is paid. And remember, account receivables and asset, therefore now account receivables and asset will be decreasing by 10,000, and bank as an asset will also be increasing by the same amount of 10,000 because we received an amount of 10,000 from Greenfinger in part settlement of the account that they owed. So now these are the transactions that were required of us to do, and the requirement says to prepare an analysis of the above transaction to show the effect. Take note, it says to show the effect of each transaction on the accounting equation in a tabular form as shown below. So now we are already given the table on how the accounting equation should be. And take note, that is a full 15 marks. So now it will be the date, the assets, the liability, the owner's equity, and the last part will be the details, but they do not provide the column for details in this case, but we have to also take the details column into consideration. So now we will be doing this accounting equation, and it is for the month of February, and I will be doing it on this page for the month of February in the year 2016. For the month of February in the year 2016. So now I will be doing the accounting equation in this table that I have constructed myself. It is the same accounting equation and in the same format, but I only added the last column where I have to write the details. If it's income, I have to specify that is income. If it's expense, I have to specify that it is an expense. And if it's drawings or capital, I have to specify. Now, before I consider starting this exercise, I just want to emphasize on one very important part, that capital increases the owner's equity. If there is capital, please don't forget that it will increase the owner's equity. And also don't forget that income will be also increasing the owner's equity. And all these two, they are all recorded as positive under owner's equity. And also again, please don't forget or be reminded that if there are drawings that are made by the owner, drawings are recorded as negative, and our drawings, they reduce the owner's equity. And the last item or the last element that affect our owner's equity will be an expense. And also take note that expenses, they reduce the owner's equity. Therefore now, whenever there is an expense that is paid or whenever there is an expense that is incurred, that will be recorded under the owner's equity. So please take note of this because they are very crucial when it comes to the recording of the accounting equation, more specifically with regard to the owner's equity column. So let me go straight to the transactions because I've already highlighted the basics with regard to how to record and which entry to record. Now, the first transaction, as I mentioned below, it says that a business bank account was opened and an amount of 50,000 was deposited into the business bank account by the owner. So now, as I mentioned to you, that the owner contributed money into the bank of the business. And because the owner deposited money into the bank of the business, therefore now the bank account as an asset will be increasing, and at the same time the capital contribution will be increasing. So now the capital will also have to increase because the owner deposited money in the form of the capital contribution. So now when we do our accounting equation, this will be a plus 50,000 rands of the money that was deposited by the owner. And because capital affect owner's equity, therefore now this will be recorded as 50,000 under owner's equity. And under details, you write capital that was contributed by the owner. Therefore now under details, we write capital. It is very important to note that if an entry affects the owner's equity, you must always write the details. Why? I did show you before that under owner's equity, there are 4 elements that get to be recorded. We record income, we record expense, we record capital, and we record drawings. So now if there are 4 things that will affect our owner's equity, then it becomes very important that we also explain if what this entry is all about. That is why now we don't just record the amount, but we also write and explain under details if what is a specific amount for. So now this was transaction number 1 or day number 1 where money was received. Remember, this 50,000 is for bank, just to take note of that. This 50,000 is for bank because the bank account was opened and we received money of 50,000 from the owner in the form of cash. And the second entry is an entry that tells us that 3 Apple iPads for 8,000. Take note, 3 Apple iPads for 8,000 each. So now the business bought 3 Apple iPads, and they were bought from X Connection for business purpose. And as I said to you, we have to say 3 times by 8,000, and this will give us an amount of 24,000 rands, which is the total value of the iPads that were bought. Then it further says that 7,500 was paid in cash with the outstanding balance on account. Take note, with the outstanding balance on account. That means the rest of the balance was not yet paid, or the rest of the balance will be paid in the future, set at the balance on account. So now, as I did mention to you that we have to record this as an asset, where we record the total of 24,000 as the asset, because these iPads are bought for the purpose of the business. They are bought for the use in the business. Therefore now, these iPads will be assets to the business. Therefore now, this will be number 2, and we have to say plus 24,000. The assets of the business will increase. Now remember, they also mentioned to us that 7,500 was paid. So now in part purchasing or in part payment of these iPads, we only paid 7.5. So now if we bought iPads to the value of 24,000, but we only paid 7,500, that means the rest must still be paid. So now we paid only 7,500. That means the balance of 16,500 is the one that is not yet paid. Remember, this is not yet paid. Not yet paid. The balance is not yet paid. The 16,000 was not paid because out of the 24,000 rands, which is the value of the 3 iPads, we only paid 7,500. That means 16,500 of the balance, as they said, 16,500 of the balance is on account, or it will still be paid, as they said that 7.5 was paid for cash with the outstanding balance on account. And remember, anything that is on account, in this case, on account, it will be a liability because we did not pay the 16.5 as per yet. So now, if that is the case, it means we have to acknowledge 16,500 as account payables. This will be account payables. That means the total of 16,500 is account payables, and we know that account payables is a liability. So now this is the liability, which is the money that is not yet paid. So now that means out of the 24,000, 16,500 is not yet paid. It will be recorded under liabilities. So now we have already recorded 24,000, which is an asset. Remember, this 24,000, this is the value of the iPads. This is the value of the iPads, 24,000. The 7,500 is the amount that was paid. The 7.5 is the amount that was paid, and that amount which was paid is recorded as negative under assets because it is reducing our asset being the bank account. And the second one now will be the liability of 16,500. The next one will be the liability of 16,500. I've calculated it for you previously. So now remember, as I mentioned to you before, that accounting equation must always balance. If you look at the total of the asset and the liability, the total of the asset, in fact, which is 16,500, because if you say 24,000 minus 7.5, this will give you 16,500 positive. And this is our assets, and there under our liabilities, we have the same 16.5. Under owner's equity, there is nothing. Under owner's equity, there is nothing. So now our assets are still equal to the owner's equity plus the liabilities. But please, when you write in the exam, don't write these calculations. I just want to show you that accounting equation must always balance whenever you have completed recording a specific transaction. So now we have recorded the liability, the amount that is not yet paid. We have recorded the value of the iPads, which is 24,000, and we have recorded the amount that was paid, which is 7,500, and this is the amount of the bank. Then we go to the third transaction and we see what does the third transaction has for us. And we see number 3, they say the owner paid his annual golf club membership fee. The owner paid his, take note, it says his. It's not for business, it's a personal transaction that was done by the owner. And this was in payment of his own golf club fee. And the fee of the golf club was 2,000. Remember, the owner withdraw money from the business, and it says from the business bank account. So the owner took money out of the business bank account, and that money was for personal use. And remember, whenever the owner takes anything from the business for personal use, that is called drawings. So now that means our drawings will be recorded as increase. Our drawings will be recorded as increase. But don't forget that the effect of drawings under owner's equity is negative. Don't forget that the effect of drawings under owner's equity is negative. That is why in the requirements we're required to prepare the analysis to show the effect, of each of the above account transaction in the accounting equation. So now, although drawings are increasing, but drawings are reducing the owner's equity. Then because the owner took money out of the business, then if the owner took money out of the business, it means the bank will have to decrease, because bank is decreasing whenever money goes out of the business. And in this case, money went out of the business because the owner took money for personal use in part payment of his own personal golf club. So now that is why now when we record this in the accounting equation, it will be recorded as decrease in the bank, because money which is 2,000 rands went out of the business, and that money was because of the personal use, and that money was because of drawings. Personal use is drawings. Therefore now under details we have to write drawings, because the owner took money for personal use, and that was drawings. So now if you see, once again, our accounting equation is still balancing. 2,000 is decreasing our assets, and 2,000 is decreasing the owner's equity. Don't forget, drawings always decrease owner's equity. Drawings and expense, they decrease owner's equity, but capital and income, they increase owner's equity. Let me repeat this again. Drawings and expense, they decrease owner's equity, but capital and income, they increase owner's equity. So now we have recorded number 3, which was the drawings where the owner took money out of the business to pay his personal things. And as I said to you, if the owner pay for his personal thing, that is called drawings. In this case, he took money for personal use because it was for his own annual golf club. It's not a transaction for the business. Then number 4 says to us that rendered landscaping services to Greenfinger on credit for 15,500. Rendered landscaping services to Greenfinger on credit 15,500. So now in this case, this business is doing the services of landscaping, or it is rendering the service of landscaping to its client. So now in this case, they rendered a service to the client, but the client did not pay. That is why they say on account. On account. That means the client did not pay for the services that were rendered by this business. However, the 15,500 will be an income, because this sole trader, who is a sole trader, strips and more, this business is in the main business to render landscaping services. So now if they are in the landscaping services, therefore now whenever they render a service of landscape, that becomes their income. That means landscaping service income, or you can just say service income. And because this transaction was on account, or it was on credit, that means now our customers, which is account receivables, are increasing. Whenever someone takes something and does not pay, or whenever the business renders a service and the customer does not pay for the service that was rendered to him or her, therefore now that will be a debtor, which is account receivables, So now in this case, our account receivables will be increasing by the amount of 15,500. So account receivables will be increasing by 15,500 because the customer did not yet pay for the services that were rendered to him, and the value of these services that were rendered were 15,500. So now the customer did not pay, we rendered a service and the customer did not pay, therefore now that will be increasing account receivables, which is normally called a debtor. So now our account receivables are increasing by 15,500, and at the same time our income will be increasing by 15,500. Why? Because the main source of income for this business is to render landscaping service. That means whenever they render the landscaping service, therefore now that becomes income to this business. So now let us record this transaction again in the accounting equation. This is number 4. As I said that a debtor is an asset, don't forget, just to remind you on that, account receivable is an asset. Account receivable is an asset. So now if account receivable is an asset, therefore now our account receivables are increasing. That means the people that we owe money or the people who owe us money are increasing because the customer is owing us money, which is 15,500 for the services that we rendered, but the customer did not pay the business as per yet. Then I will say our account receivables is an amount of 15,500. It is an amount of 15,500 that our account receivables or customers are owing us. At the same time, this money was because of the services that we rendered to the client. Therefore, now this will be services rendered income. Services rendered income because we rendered a service. Services rendered income. Or even if you just say landscaping income, because that was an income from the landscaping service. So now this will be increasing the assets, which is account receivables. Remember, this is account receivables. Just for you to get this, account receivables. This is account receivables. And remember, account receivables is an asset. As I told you that assets are increasing in this case. Please, when you write in the exam, don't write this description. I just want to make sure that you are clarified. I'm doing this for your own understanding. And 15,500 is the income because the main income of this business is to render landscaping service. So now we write this under equity, as I mentioned to you that income and capital increase equity. Expense and drawings, they decrease equity. Then now we have recorded the rendering of the service of the income, which was rendered on account. Take note, it was rendered on credit or on account. It was rendered on credit. So now whenever you do something on credit and the customer does not pay, that becomes an asset, which is called account receivables. That is why we recorded that under assets 15,500 being account receivables. It's because the business rendered a service on account, meaning on credit. Therefore now the debtors or the people who owe the business are increasing by 15,500. Then number 5 says that paid office rent. So now we are paying an office rent. Paid office rent, and we know that this is an expense. This is rent expense. This is rent expense, and we know that rent expense is increasing. But don't forget that rent expense or expenses decrease owner's equity. Expenses decrease owner's equity. So now the amount of the rent of 25,000 will decrease the owner's equity, as I mentioned to you, and emphasizing it again that drawings and expense, they decrease owner's equity. Although the rent expense is increasing, but it is decreasing the owner's equity. So we paid rent for the office for the month of February via EFT. Remember, EFT, this is cash in the bank. So now we paid this for cash. But we don't say cash in accounting, we say bank. So now, though it is cash, then that will be recognized as bank. And our bank will decrease. Why bank will decrease is because money is going out of the bank account of the business because of the rent expense that the company has paid for the month of February. So now we have to recognize that our bank is decreasing. And why bank is decreasing is because we paid money out in the form of rent or paying the rent expense. So now we have to say 25,000 is decreasing our assets, which is our bank. And at the same time, our owner's equity will decrease by 25,000. And why the owner's equity will decrease by 25,000? It is because of one reason. This 25,000 is an expense. And as I mentioned to you that expenses decrease owner's equity. Expenses and drawings decrease owner's equity. Please make sure that you keep that principle. Expenses and drawings decrease owner's equity. Let me just write this one at the bottom here. Drawings and expenses. Drawings and expenses decrease owner's equity. Decrease owner's equity. And number 2 is capital and income. Increase owner's equity. Increase owner's equity. Increase owner's equity. So now you must know all the times that whenever there are drawings and whenever there are expenses, the amount of the drawings and the amount of the expense must be recorded as negative under the owner's equity. Under the owner's equity, I just wrote it in a different negative. Under owner's equity, which is 25,000. I normally use brackets as a negative. I forgot now that we are using the negative one. So now, expense and drawings, they decrease owner's equity, and capital and income, they increase owner's equity. That means if you record capital, it must always be a plus. If you record drawings, it must be a minus. And if you record income, it must be a plus. And we have all of them. There is the income, a plus. And if you record an expense, it must be a negative under owner's equity at all times. So now, incomes and capital increase owner's equity, and expense and drawings, they decrease owner's equity. So now that is why we record 25,000 of the rent expense as negative under owner's equity, because expenses decrease owner's equity. Then after we go to the next entry, which is number 6, which is the last one. Number 6 says to us that received 10,000. Received 10,000. And if we receive money, therefore now obviously bank will increase. We received 10,000. So now immediately from there you can stop and say bank will surely increase because we received money. 10,000 will be increasing our bank account, 10,000. It said received 10,000. So now if we receive 10,000, we receive 10,000, then bank will increase by 10,000. I've recorded that. Where is the 10,000 coming from? From Greenfinger. Who is Greenfinger? Greenfinger is the customer that we rendered a service on account previously, which was 15,500. Previously, we rendered a service to Greenfinger on credit. So now Greenfinger is paying us. So now this is a sign or something that should tell you that Greenfinger was a debtor, obviously, or the Greenfinger was an asset account receivable. Therefore, now he is paying us. Then we expect that account receivables must be decreasing because the customer is paying us back. So if the customer is paying us back, therefore now the account of the customer must be decreasing by the amount that the customer is paid. And they say as part settlement on their account. As part settlement on their account. So now the customer does not pay the full amount. Remember, previously we rendered a service to Greenfinger, that was number 4, and this amounted to 15,500. So now it says he does not pay the full amount, but he only pays us only 10,000. So now if it was a plus previously when he rendered a service on credit, or when the business rendered a service on credit, therefore it means in this case this must be 10,000. Remember, this 10,000 is decreasing that 15,000 because the customer is paying the 15,500 that he owed the business because the service was rendered on credit. And all other entries will not be affected throughout. So now that means we have recorded the 10,000. Remember, the 10,000, it is the money in the bank. We received 10,000, and this is reducing account receivables. This is decreasing account receivables. The next 10,000 is decreasing account receivables, which is reducing that 15,000 which was recorded as account receivables previously. So now we have recorded all the entries that needed to be recorded with these transactions. So now with that, then now we can calculate the total at the bottom and we balance our accounting equation. Then now we can balance our accounting equation. And in balancing the accounting equation, then now we need to calculate the totals, starting with the assets, 50,000 rands plus 24,000 rands minus 7,500 minus 2,000 plus 15,500 minus 25,000 plus 10,000. Then this will give us a total of 65,000 rands. This will give us a total of 65,000 rands, which is the value of the assets. Then under our liabilities, there was no payment of the 16,500. It remained the same. Then we have to go to our owner's equity, 50,000 rands minus 2,000 plus 15,500 minus 25,000, and this gives us the total of 48,500. And if we say 48,500 plus our liabilities 16,500, this gives us the same 65,000 rands. So now that means the total of the assets and the total of the liabilities and the equity gives us the assets. Remember, accounting equation says assets is equal to owner's equity plus liability. It is equal to owner's liability plus owner's equity. So now that means liability plus owner's equity is equal to assets. That is why if you say this plus this, you get the same 65,000 rands. So now this is how easy the accounting equation is when it comes to your subject. And with that, guys, being said, I can surely say thank you, and I hope you'll have enjoyed, or you'll enjoy and understand something out of this video. God bless you.